and welcome back to Let Glory Shine. I'm your host, Martha Glory, and I'm so excited to be here again for another amazing episode. I have a fantastic guest. I love this world of podcasting and people being introduced because somebody's like, "Oh my gosh, you've got to meet my friend," da da da, because of. And that's what happened is John Emery had reached out and he's like, "You've got to meet my friend Dave Roberts," and so that's how I was connected to him. Dave and I jumped on a Zoom, and it was like, oh, we're doing the same kinds of cool things, and we want to help people, and we want to help people, others step out of their trauma and reclaim their lives. And we had an amazing conversation. And I was like, you got to come on my show. So I want to welcome Dave Roberts. Dave Roberts, welcome to Let Glory Shine.
Oh, thank you, Martha. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited for the conversation today.
Absolutely. So I've read all of your accolades. I've read your short bio, and like I told you before we jumped on and started hit record, you've done amazing things. You've taken tragedy and turned it into something very purposeful and very intimately encouraging, right? So can you just give my audience the acorn version of that tragedy that has led to kind of your life purpose?
Well, about 3 weeks after my first grandchild and my daughter's first child was born, about a week after I got conferred that I had finished the requirements for my master's degree in social work, my daughter Janine was diagnosed with a rare and aggressive form of cancer. She was diagnosed on May 26, 2002, and her pregnancy masked any symptoms of her cancer. She had injured her foot through a freak accident in pregnancy. Her foot did not respond to traditional healing methods for a swelled foot. It didn't respond to elevation, any type of ibuprofen, rest. So an MRI revealed probably about 2 weeks after her child and my first grandchild, Brianna, was born, that she had an undefined 8 centimeter mass at the bottom of her foot. It was confirmed to be cancerous. To make a very long story short, we were referred to the Dana-Farber Hospital and Research Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts on June, I believe it was 1st or 2nd of 2002. In a 5-minute consult, we were told that there was no cure for her cancer. She had a stage 4 tumor, which meant her whole body was totally involved with cancer, bone marrow, lymph node, bones. We were told the only chance that we had for recovery was if had aggressive chemotherapy, putting her cancer in full remission until we could find a cure. What I heard, what my daughter heard, what her significant other heard, what my wife heard is that unless there's a miracle, your daughter's going to die. And after 8 rounds of chemotherapy, 6 of which put her cancer into 80% remission, her cancer remetastasized after the first of the year in 2003. And on March 1st, 2003, she transitioned, and I call it transition from the physical world to the spiritual world with hospice by her side and her family by her side. And that occurred on March 1st, 2003. And that put me head first into a world that was unfamiliar, that was terrifying. And my job really was to try to figure out who am I? What kind of a world do I want to live in now that my daughter's physical absence is a reality? And do I even want to live in a world without my daughter? And never did I consider suicide, Martha, but if God or uh, his designee came down and said, "Look, we're going to let you start eternity tomorrow," I would have done that in a heartbeat.
Wow. I'm sorry for your loss. I don't know. There's no words when you experience, that type of devastation. But I think that you said something that's really important, and I think that a lot of people have to face after tragedy, right? I had to face it in my own way after escaping from the cult, right? So I didn't experience death in that way, but that question of who am I after, right? X, Y, and Z. That is one of the biggest questions that we have to face as individuals in this life, right?
Hmm.
And often we find our answers in external things, but that only suffices for so long when until you have to go inside and say, no, no, no. Who am I really after this tragedy? Who am I after this? For me, the abuse, the trauma, that the only things I ever knew, right? Who am I after those things? So when you said that, I mean, I felt that to the core of who am I after losing my daughter? And do I really even want to continue this human existence after this pain, after this tragedy, right? Even though you had other people, your wife, your grandchildren, your other children, right? There was such a piece of you that died that day. And so it made you question everything. So how do you go on from there?
Well, first of all, I had a lot of people who refused to let me just, just go, wallow in the muck of my grief for too long. I had a lot of support. It started at home with my wife and also with my one of my daughter's favorite cat, Bootsy, who got me up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning when I didn't want to get up. And when I protested, he just meowed louder. So I figured to prevent him from waking everybody else up in the house, I'd get up and feed him and do what I had to do. And also my students at Utica University, I had started teaching there in January of 2003, about 6 weeks before my daughter transitioned. And I had applied for the job and got hired when my daughter had a good point in her cancer where she was doing better with chemotherapy had a positive effect. And I always wanted to, after my MSW, Martha, do private practice and teach, but private practice was out of the question because the amount of energy that I expended dealing with my daughter's grief was just too much for me to handle another chapter, which was going to require a lot of my energy to make it work. Um, so, and my students they knew what was going on. I had to tell them because I had to cancel class for a week. And that whole community just lifted me up when I didn't have the energy to lift myself up. I'd get students smiling at me during an evening where I just didn't feel like teaching and saying, Mr. Roberts or Dave, we really love your course, or they just smile at me, and that got me going. And then gradually I found a parental bereavement support group with the help of my wife. Gradually I began to re-engage in life by doing workshops, by doing some writing about my experience in honor of my daughter so that in the hope of helping others who were facing their own tragedies. And then finally, 7 years after my daughter's transition, I met through pure serendipity Reverend Patty Farino, an interfaith minister who was then from Long Island and now living in South Carolina, who facilitated a spiritually transformative experience that allowed me to find peace with my daughter Janine's transition and got me to really believe in the survival of consciousness after death. And prior to meeting Patty, I was very science-based, and I'm still very science-based. But after meeting with Patty and our subsequent conversations and friendship and mentorship, I now have integrated psychology with spirituality and believe there's a place for both in the universe to explain the wonders of the universe, to explain behavior, and also to help us transcend tragedy, however we define that tragedy.
Wow. That there's so many nuggets that I want to jump in on and ask, but the one that you ended on, the spirituality versus science, right? And when you're in this, because I understand that everything's energy based, like we're all energetic beings floating around on this, this big planet, and everything we do is a ripple effect of another thing, right? Because we're all energy, everything around us is energy. And when I start talking like this and having these conversations, people are like, "You're woo woo." I'm like, it's science. It's science. There's so, and then I talk up, spirituality. I talk about angels. I talk about, art, like all these things. To me, they're all connected. To
Hmm.
me, it's all part of science. It's all part of the spirituality experience. And so for you to say that they're both, yes, yes, but I don't know how to put that in a bow, like with a little bow and tie it and be like, this is why, right? Because I feel like I go around in circles being like, this is It's all connected,
Yeah.
guys. It's all connected.
What I learned from my conversations with Patty is we truly live in a multidimensional universe, and we have access to other dimensions if we so choose. If we're open to it, we can be receptive to signs from our loved ones. Um, you know, and that can increase our awareness you know, that there's more to this world than just the physical world. And one of the things that I subscribe to and I believe in, I take a quote from The Afterlife of Billy Fingers by Annie Kagan. And where one of the teachings in that book is that um, once you realize that, I think it's something like we live in a multidimensional universe, you'll never look at life, death, or life after death the same way again.
Yes,
Um, and I may be, I'm paraphrasing that, or I may be misquoting it a little bit, but the part about, you'll never see life, death, or life after death the same is true. And once Patty exposed me to a whole new world, I never looked at all three the same anymore. In fact, in a death, dying, and bereavement course that I teach with my students at Utica University, we talk about the spiritual aspects of death, and with the question being, do we really truly die? Or do we just simply go on in another form?
transition.
Yeah.
Yeah, to another
So,
dimension.
yep. So basically, I have them ponder that question without trying to influence their belief system.
Oh, wow. That would be fun for me. That would be fun for me. For so many years I believed, when you die, lights out, right? Bye.
Hmm.
Like light. And then when I started learning about the metaphysics, when I started learning about what it meant to be an energetic being and life everlasting, right? Our soul never dies.
Yeah.
What does that mean? What does that look like? Where do we go after, we leave this human vessel? Where do we go next, right? And understanding that I've always been here, will always be here, and right, like it was mind blowing to wrap your head around and then to like start talking about it and people looking at you like, what? And I remember my husband, like, I was trying to have this conversation with my husband one time, and he was like, Martha, like, no, like when we die, we die. Like you go in the ground or you get embalmed. You're like, it's over. Like nobody, you're not there. It's empty. And I'm like, oh, what a sad existence. What a sad existence to believe that that's all there is, that's all that there ever will be. That just made me so sad. And so now understanding that no, I'm surrounded by the people that love me,
Hmm.
my
Hmm.
ancestors, my ancestors' ancestors, right? I am
Hmm.
surrounded, I am protected, I am encouraged, I am like, right? I have a cheerleading squad that is so huge
Hmm.
of the unseen that are cheering me on, that are, helping me, that are like holding my hand on this journey called life, right? How amazing to like that's what I choose to believe.
Yeah, and I choose to believe that too. I mean, above my desk, I have an ancestor altar, and I have my father, my mother, I have my daughter. Um, I have a good friend of mine whose sister died a few years ago. They're all part of my soul tribe. Um, and we're all part of the universal oneness anyway, and that oneness can transcend from the physical world to the spiritual world. And a lot of times those two worlds come together um, into one world. I mean, if you take a look at shamanistic holistic practitioners, they look at other worlds simultaneously to this world. Um, I don't think they delineate between an afterlife and the physical world. It's just that other worlds. And I've let my imagination run to the fact that I could be living simultaneously in the physical world and in other worlds at the same time, doing something different. Um, and if you want to call that woo-woo, that's fine. But, for me, it's like, it's all about energy. Our energy could be in different places and different dimensions at the same time. I've learned that a portion of our soul can reincarnate into the physical world. I mean, when you talk about energy, we're omnipotent. We can be everywhere at once. We're omnipresent. We can just be everywhere at once. And there's no rules with that. There's no boundaries that are imposed by the physical body. There's no limitations. We can, and if we can, but also we can choose to see that there are no limitations to what we can believe, how we can expand our thinking. If we have the right individuals nurturing that, and if we truly believe that there's more to our existence than the physical world.
Right. I think the biggest, where I found the most freedom was removing the box around God, right? And around what I thought it had to look like, right?
Mhm.
When you remove the box, you realize there's endless possibilities. There's
Yep.
endless, right? Like it doesn't have to fit in this Judeo-Christian box that we were brought up
No.
with, right? And then what I also realized is that Christianity or religion as a whole wants to put God in a box, wants to put these things in a box. And I'm like, no, both can be true. Like I can
Yes.
believe in God and I can love God and I can understand this energy. I can understand that we're omnipresent and that we're like
Yeah.
and that God is in us, right? Like I can believe both can be
Hmm.
true.
Yeah.
And so I have found that the most freedom that I've experienced on this journey of understanding is removing that box of what it needed to look like, right? What
Hmm.
was the freeing point for you?
The freeing point for me was the experience I had with Patty. She opened me up to a whole different perspective to realize that there was, two things could be true at the same time. I could be an advocate for science, but I could also be an advocate for the integration of spirituality with science to create a greater understanding of our behavior. And also for me, it's like, she asked me, "What do you believe?" And what I believed was truly that science was the only thing that could explain behavior.
Mm.
But then she opened me up to the idea of belief expansion. And she said, you don't incorporating a different belief or a different belief from your core belief system doesn't mean you abandon your core belief system. It's in addition to your core belief system. And that's the basis for me of now for critical thinking. It's the basis now for expanding our horizons. It's the basis for flexibility in thinking. I look at my journey with my daughter as like rebuilding the foundation of a house that's cracked. Now, if I use the same materials to build a foundation of my life, that foundation being my beliefs, values, and priorities prior to my daughter Janine's transition, and I use those same materials, Martha, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now. I would be probably withering away, walled up, I would be probably curled up in the fetal position, just waiting for somebody to take me out of my misery.
Yeah.
Um, in order for me to have moved forward in my grief, the foundation for my had to have changed. It was had to be with had to be made with different materials, different belief, additional beliefs and additional perspectives to complement the foundation that I had developed prior to my daughter's transition. And a lot of people, I think, are afraid of when you get afraid of change, especially when you present a new perspective, thinking, "Oh my goodness, I got to abandon my core beliefs." No, you don't. You can expand your core beliefs by adding perspectives of what I'm presenting to you that resonate with you in that belief system. It's about total empowerment to see the world as we choose to.
Yes, empowerment. The belief expansion, I hadn't heard it put in those terms, but I love that, right? Because I went through that journey, that lesson, right? Where because I was so ingrained and brainwashed through the cult, right? Through the belief systems of what I was taught was true and like that there was no wiggle room. This is what what I was taught was what it was.
Mhm.
So when I had to start dismantling every single thing that I ever thought to be true and I had to start asking myself, is this something that I truly believe with what I have learned up to this point, right? I had
Yep.
to be willing to be courageous enough to question. And
Yep.
that's a really scary thing for a lot of people, Dave, as
Mhm.
you know, right? But if I would have understood back then, okay, belief expansion. Let's think about it in those terms, right? I feel like that would have been a little less scary.
Mhm. Yeah, because belief expansion is simply that. You expand your beliefs to the extent that you wish to the extent that whatever different type of viewpoint you're hearing resonates with you. And the thing is, you can. I tell my students, find your truth in anything that is different from your belief system, even if your truth is that you see no truth in it. At least you have made a choice. At least you have said, I've examined it, I've looked at it, it doesn't resonate with me. So take that same process when another different belief is presented to you and determine what's my truth within that. Can I incorporate some of this? Can I incorporate all of it? Or do I choose to incorporate none of it?
Yep.
It's still all about empowerment for that person to make a decision that's best for them at that particular moment in time.
Right. But that is a courageous decision.
Hmm.
That is a courageous decision to be able to say, I'm willing to question, I'm willing to make a choice, and I'm willing to be right or wrong, right? Because
Hmm.
the more we know, the more we grow, the more we have to question.
Yeah.
And we have to be willing to be like, okay, well, I thought I made a choice about that. Is that still what I believe? And I feel like I'm on that, I'm constantly in that process of having to look at again some of the things that I thought I knew at the beginning of my healing journey and reevaluate and say, does this still stand true with what I've learned since then?
Hmm.
Because if we're not learning and growing, we're dying,
Yeah.
right? And so I'm constantly learning and growing and reevaluating and having to say, does this still stay true to
Yeah.
what I believe now?
Yeah. And we're going to be doing that until the day we transition out of the physical world. I mean, growth is ongoing. It doesn't matter how young or old you are. Um, I'm nobody is. I tell my students, you're not too young for me to learn from you, and hopefully, I'm not too old for you to learn from me. And and that's I stay curious. As the older I get, the more curious I get, and that keeps me engaged. That keeps me I think hungry for more knowledge and realizing that our growth is ongoing until the day that we transition. So
Yeah. What an important conversation. I feel like we all should have the courage to be able to question and to be able to desire more, right? Instead of
mhm,
saying, well, it's always been that way. That's what I always believed. That's what my parents told me. That's what my pastor told me. Whatever it is, be able to have the courage to question those things for yourself. Because
yeah.
I think there's a lot of freedom and empowerment in those choices.
And I think healthy skepticism is good. Mark Ireland, whose father, Richard Ireland, was the medium to the stars. Mark has done a lot of work with certification of mediums, and he himself has experienced the transition of an adult child. He wrote a book called Persistence of the Soul, and he talks about skeptics versus debunkers. And I really like this. Skeptics are going to explore. Like for me, somebody being science-based, if you present something that seems to be relevant in terms of explaining behavior but isn't science-based, my healthy skepticism is going to research and see if there's a scientific explanation to explain a non-scientific phenomenon. For me, if science can't explain it, then I am going to say, okay, this is real, even though science can't explain it. This is real. This is this is real to me, but at least I've explored it. A debunker just stays very firm in their own belief system without exploration. So I tell anybody that will listen, be a skeptic, not a debunker. And that's again influenced by Mark Ireland's work with that.
Mark Ireland. I'm gonna have to look that one up. I'm not familiar with that one. I'm gonna look that one up. I like that. With the last few minutes of our time today, Dave, I want you to tell us what you're doing with now because of this tragedy, what you're doing, your mission, your vision, what you're getting to do with it all.
Well, one of the things is that the experiences that I've had with Pat, um, with the spiritually transformative experience and my new philosophy in terms of integration of psychology and spirituality, that informs everything I do with my students. My students are very well aware, especially in my death, dying, and bereavement course and care of the human spirit course that I teach. They're very much aware of my background, very much aware of my history. So that informs me, and I'm motivated to try to really make a difference in the lives of young adults so that they can go forward. I mean, there's a Native American belief that there are four seasons to life, and it's the elders in Native American culture. It's their job to take the lessons of the first three seasons that they've learned and pass those on to the younger generation.
Mm.
So that's one of the things that I'm trying to do. Also, I bugged Patty for 10 years. And so we got to write a book to talk about our experiences. I think what we went through, our conversations will help many. So we did that, and we rolled the book out on March 1st, 2021. It's called When the Psychology Professor Met the Minister. Anybody that's curious about my spiritual journey, about me, um, everything is right on the table about how Patty and I met, what I learned, how she taught me to bridge the world of psychology and spirituality and the importance of critical thinking. And the other thing that's been an extension of service is my podcast, the Teaching Journeys podcast, where I have individuals like yourself, and you're going to be a guest very soon on my podcast, where I have individuals who have transcended tragedy or teach people how to transcend tragedy and are willing to share what they've learned to help those in my audience who are transcending their own tragedy. And it's Martha, whatever else the universe has in store for me, I've told the universe, whatever door you open, I will look at it and in all likelihood walk through it because as I've learned, the universe's plan has always been a lot better than mine.
Absolutely. Yes, I tell God that all the time. I'm like, I'm surrendering my plans because yours always turn out better than mine. Yours are always bigger than my small mind could have imagined. So the more that we surrender and the more that we just show up and get to just see what happens, right? There's God likes to surprise us. God likes to change things up just because he can, right? And I love that. And as we stay in that curiosity, as we stay in that surrender, so many amazing things start happening and crossing our paths and doors opening. That's real. That's the world that we live in. But you have to believe that you are available to that world. That world is available to you. So I love that. I love that. I love that. So, Dave, I always end every episode with the same question for my guest. The show is called Let Glory Shine. And so, what does it mean to let Dave's glory shine?
I think one is to just be genuine, to be authentic, to and genuineness for me is also revealing very transparently the good parts of my existence and the not so good parts of my existence. That shadow element that we all carry has isn't in many ways defined who I am. It's defined my genuineness. I've learned that we can learn not only from the happy moments, but more so from the not so happy moments. And that I also let my glory shine by realizing that spiritual awareness isn't about just light bulbs going off and making connections. It's also about doing really the deep and dirty work that we have to do within ourselves. Is looking at those parts of ourselves that society has discouraged us to look at for the simple reason it isn't happiness. But we need to do the work with that shadow element, realize the gifts in
Shadow
our
part.
shadow
Yes.
in order for us to be able to shine, to be genuine, to be authentic, and to make genuine human connection with those who we come across.
So, so, so true. The shadow parts, when they remain in the shadows, we cannot heal it. We
No.
cannot release it, right? Nothing releases in the darkness. You have to bring it to the light. You have to take it out of the shadows and you have to sit with it. You have to feel it in order to truly heal it and release it. So that's such important words. Thank you so
Uh,
much.
you're welcome. And everything that happens to us is in service to us, whether we know it or not.
Yes. Good, bad, and indifferent,
You
right?
got
Good,
you
bad, and
got it.
indifferent is still in service to us. It's still the lessons that help create the foundation on which we get to stand on now. So, Dave, thank you so much for this amazing conversation. This was so much fun, and the time goes by way too quickly when the conversation is flowing so well. So, thank you so much for being on my show. I can't wait to be on yours as well in a few weeks. Thank you again for everybody that has joined us tonight for another episode of Let Glory Shine. I look forward to seeing y'all next week. Same place, same station. Thank you, Dave Roberts.
You're welcome. And thank you, Martha, for just a great conversation, for inviting me to be a guest on your podcast.
Absolutely. And good night.
Let glory shine from the ashes I rise. Every scar a story, every tear baptized. This is my freedom.
We hope you enjoyed today's show on Prospera TV Network. Make it a point to visit us on YouTube and catch all your favorite shows anytime you want. Interested in hosting a show of your own? Or advertising your business on our network? Contact Elena Rodriguez.